So this presentation is just a short exploration of the differences between discussion boards, wikis and blogs in terms of their design and their layout and their operation and how the user kind of works with them. I've become increasingly more kind of interested in, so we're not dealing with a pedagogical use here. I just want to point that out really. So I've become interested in how they kind of function, and perhaps there's a greater level of similarity between them that really needs to be exploited in terms of, they seem to be used in education now as separate ideas, but actually they kind of perform very similar sort of things. So here's a typical kind of layout of a discussion board here, and what I'm trying to highlight is that the user is connected with single submissions, single postings onto this board, and they're organized in a kind of hierarchical way, and they can also be tagged in a different way, and usually you get an understanding of what's read or not been read by you and the date that it's been posted. On the next slide we have a wiki. Here I've kind of just laid out what a typical wiki looks like, different pages which are interconnected in different ways, usually using hyperlinks. And here the connection between the user is slightly different. Depending on privileges, people edit pages together in a collaboration. There's not so much hierarchy, but again we use tags, and there's a potential to understand what you've read and not read and the date that it's published. Again, you get a similar sort of situation with blogs. This is published using date here, and usually single users write single postings on there. They can be tagged again, and you get information about what's been read or not read. So if we take that column and place it in the middle, then we begin to see perhaps a picture that might be a different way of looking at these use of these tools, where it's perhaps focused across the use of tools rather than looking at them as individual items. So a user or a student might post things on their discussion board, make things in a wiki, or post things on their blog. So it would be useful to be able to see that structure and be able to explore it, so that as a lecturer I can understand what different ways that student's been working. Of course, sometimes I might not be using a wiki, but it's still valuable to see the distribution of that input across there. And I would argue that that's useful for the student as well, so that they can see that perhaps their peer has been writing in their blog recently. Those sorts of simple things. And this isn't a major thing. This is quite familiar to people that use these sorts of bits of technology. And here we see perhaps there is a link between structure as well. Perhaps we can see a way that the connection between different topics are laid out. Perhaps a greater use of tags here, so that I can explore tags that have been brought up or tagged in the wiki, but also see them how they've been used in the blog as well and in the discussion board. And overall I should be able to see what's read and not been read by these individual students, so that I get an overview of that, and of course be able to explore all these different aspects in terms of date, what's been happening over the past week or month, and where those things are. So just to finish off, wouldn't it be great as well as if these tools were more connected between each other, so that if I'm in a discussion board, why can't I suddenly kickstart a wiki page about that discussion that I'm having, where we can work more collaboratively on a discussion here, and why can't I kick a piece of information into my blog here to expand in a different way? And lastly, why can't we have discussion boards that run